Welcome friends to another r/ProRevenge video. Today we've got some great stories, and our first story's from Max and Cheese. Neighbors were being petty about property lines. We bought a new house about 9 months ago, and we've been fixing it up. With the warmer weather, outside work is gradually started to take place. We have a nice driveway that wraps around our in-town house and gives us parking in the back. As nice as it is, it leaves almost no space for my 1-year-old to run around and play in the grass. We live in town, and the front yard is a hill. The side yards are about 4 to 5 feet away from the neighbors. Where he can run is about a 10 by 10 square that's openly connected to our back neighbors, who have just under half an acre. So we bought some cheap fencing and thought we could fence that line in right inside the property line, so I wasn't constantly chasing him out of the neighbor's yard. Last month, I knocked on their door and asked if it was okay that he run in the backyard. It was unused and typically overgrown. I also offered if they let us, we would mow it once a week for them in thanks. He's 1 year old and just likes to run in circles. Sometimes we bring out bubbles, but we wouldn't be putting any toys or anything into their yard. They told me to keep my son away from their yard or they would have me trespassed off. Okay, no worries. Not my property, right? I thought it wouldn't hurt to ask permission to give him some more room to run during the day. So we used some line and marked where we would put our fence. 3 inches inside the property line. They watched us from the windows while we were out there. Of course, while we were finding the stakes for the property, we stepped into their yard for a couple of minutes. The next morning, I was going to take my son out to burn some energy. They had put a whole bunch of very old children's toys and rusty playground equipment right next to where we were going to put the fence. I couldn't keep my son away from them, so I had to take him inside. They still watched from the window. I let my husband know that if we wanted to take him out, we would have to take him to the park. He's still a little young for the park's equipment, so we don't take him often. So my husband looked up who owned the property, and turns out it's a rental. So he called the landlord and let him know that his tenants, who had no children, were storing dilapidated playground equipment in the backyard, and they only mowed it once a month. The landlord said he would come out and inspect, since the backyard was supposed to be well maintained as per their contract. A week later, my husband called again, telling the landlord that the neighbors hadn't even begun to clean up. He also made an offer to buy the land, minus some backyard of the neighbors. The landlord accepted, tired of paying the property taxes on land that wasn't even taken care of. Now I watch as the neighbors are forced to remove all the rusty playground equipment from our yard. I think we're gonna need some more fencing. I'm just sat here wondering how well off OP was that they could afford to just buy the land. I'm also kind of curious more about these neighbors because where did they get all this dilapidated kids playground toys and whatnot? In the event OP couldn't just outright buy that land and the neighbors put all those kids toys out there clearly trying to lure their kid over, do you guys think that'd be worth confronting the neighbors about? Straight up calling them out about it, maybe having a little bit of an argument over it? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is from GSXing. Close my bank account. I'm going somewhere else. So, many years ago, my primary bank was Key. I didn't have too many issues with them, but that all changed after I sold my car. I went to deposit a cashier's check at location number 1 of 2 in the city. All good, no issues. I come back in about 2 days to pull those funds because it was time to buy a car. I meet this lady, and of course, she's not all that friendly. I tell her I'm here to pull funds to buy a car, etc, etc. She tells me she can't pull them, and she's also putting that money on a 2-week hold. Well, I was not happy about that. Why are we putting hold on funds from a deposited cashier check? So I end up driving over to Key Bank location number 2. Tell them I'm trying to pull funds. They see the block and we talk it out. They're asking me what I intend to use the money for. I told them it's to buy a car. I'm kind of annoyed that I have to explain myself, but they were way more reasonable and let me pull my funds, pretty much without further issue. So I'm obviously happy by this point and go buy my car with haste. Then I go back to Key Bank number 1. I see everyone there that I originally saw, including our not so friendly cashier. I let them all know I'm closing all of my accounts immediately and to cash out all funds. The look of disappointment on everyone's face was enough satisfaction for me. One of them tried to reason with me, but I was ready to move to a credit union anyways. We're done here. Small petty revenge story, but I'll take it, and I'm doing much better with credit unions today. If I was in OP's shoes, I'd want to do the exact same thing. Personally, I think if a bank is giving you a hard time, that's the kind of thing you need to do. Don't let the company that's handling and using your money to just bully you into accepting things that are just unreasonable for you doing service with them, especially if you're paying them any service fees of any kind. Our next story is from C Broccoli 8386. Thank you, Petty Doctor. I'm at the doctor right now. A patient thinks he's waiting for too long and starts to yell at the ladies in the front. The doctor comes and calls for the patient's name. Then he starts acting like he can't see the patient and continues to call for him. After like a minute or so, he says to the patient, "If you ever yell like that at my colleagues again, I'll really never see you again." Nobody clapped because that really happened, but I really needed to laugh because my doctor's always kind of jerk funny and always makes my day with that. Personally, I'm willing to bet that nobody enjoys that stay in the waiting room, especially when it feels like you've been there for half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe even longer. And while personally I'd probably be inwardly fuming having waited that long, I would never react like that. Personally, I just can't imagine making a fool of yourself like this and acting out in a waiting room. Is there a certain point where it's acceptable to ever react like that? I kinda doubt it. By the way, if you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below so you never miss any of my daily videos. Every video has awesome stories, like our next story from HTTP Mommy. I tattled to his mom. When I was a youngin', I used to sell weed. I had this one client who liked to flex constantly on social media, posting his rent money and one time asking to take a picture with a pound of weed I had, which he then posted to Instagram. One day, he picked up an ounce that was about a $1 to $200 value and promised to pay me in a couple of days. He had done this before and always paid eventually, so I thought whatever and gave it to him. He then moved to a different state, and when asked for payment, he blocked me. He must have thought he was really smart. I'm good at finding people online, so I calmly found his whole family on Facebook. His mother was a devoutly Christian Southern woman, so I messaged her the picture of him holding a pound of weed. He unblocked me later that day and sent me a bunch of messages like, "Why would you tell my mom? Who does that?" He never did end up paying, but honestly it was worth the laugh. Moral of the story is pay your weed man. I think this kind of thing extends to even beyond your dealers. Whoever it is, if you're taking something from them, you should pay them back. It just turns out that some people you try to basically steal from are a little bit more dangerous than others. Not saying that what OP did here was very dangerous, but our next story is from Cortanium 1342, Carseat Argument. I don't know if this counts, but it felt petty to me. I got into an argument with my husband this morning regarding car seat safety. Blew up into a big argument about properly strapping in, etc. He blew up and said, "What are you, a CPST? Certified in car seat safety? You just know everything now? Where's your degree or certification to be spouting all this?" I immediately went and registered for a CPST certification course and paid the $95. Doing the online training right now, and I have to do a 3-day in-person course. This time next month, I will have my certification, and then I'm happily gonna bring this argument up again, just to prove a point. I have a lot of respect for the lengths that OP's willing to go to be correct about something. If I found myself in an argument like this where somebody kept quoting all these certifications or bars that I had to reach to be able to prove them wrong, I think I would just kind of decide, you know what, it's not even worth it. Reality is you're probably not going to change that guy's opinion anyways. This next story is from Pook Falassi. Blame me for your incompetence? Good luck. 2 weeks ago, another employee visits me while we're working overnight. He proceeds to stand around and talk to me for nearly an hour while I carry on with my tasks. He's a bit of a sad sack, so I simply listen. His shift ends and he leaves. As it turns out, without completing his assigned tasks. Tasks that would have required just a small portion of his time he stood talking to me. During his shift pass down, he tells others this failure was due to me being in his way, which was patently untrue. My sights are set. No more sympathy for this guy. Earlier this week, I discover him hard asleep in the control room, some tasks still unfinished as before. I proceed to let him sleep even as the next shift is arriving. Next shift, discovering the incomplete tasks and his state of rest, informs the supervisor. This was his last day in the job. Just bought a new car too. If you want to catch a nap after completing your duties, what do I care? Not a bit. If you want to act incompetent and offer me as the excuse, I'm gonna weaponize my passive aggressiveness against you, then watch the carnage. All I know is if I was the scapegoat like OP was somehow made out to be here, I'd be livid. It's kind of incredible the way they try to explain how it was OP's fault here. Take a step back and think about trying to talk somebody's ear off for the whole day and then blaming the person you blabbed to for being the reason you didn't do anything. Dude deserved to get fired. Our next story is from Pupham, petty with mother-in-law over kids' clothes. My mother-in-law is a very difficult lady and likes to create issues out of nothing, then likes to play the victim if I show any sort of reaction. Today, I just quietly reacted with the support of my husband. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. My in-laws love having her visit, and I truly don't mind. My mother-in-law is great with the grandbabies. I try to keep their house stocked with everything they may need, including pull-ups, wipes, clothes, etc. Recently, mother-in-law has been complaining that she has no clothes for my daughter. I was a little confused because I brought a diaper box filled with her latest size only a month or two ago, but I assumed maybe it's just slowly made its way to my house and I didn't notice. Last week, my daughter shows up in 18-month Santa pajamas. I didn't say anything, but mother-in-law states she's wearing those because she has nothing else. Again, confused, but I let it go. Today, we dropped off my daughter for a weekend camping trip with the in-laws, and I packed another diaper box filled with clothes, and decided I'd pop in and take a look at what all was in the dresser they have for her, thinking I'll go through and take home whatever's too small now. So many clothes, like you can't even close the drawers. Confusion amplifies. I calmly walk out with a dozen or more pairs of pants and ask, just out of curiosity, why do you keep saying you have no clothes? Is there something wrong with these? They're her size and they definitely fit, so is it you just find them ugly or something? She immediately gets super snippy and defensive and says that yes, some of them aren't the nicest, they're also stained up, and I keep taking home all the nice ones. Keep in mind, I supply and buy all the clothes, so to me they're all nice, and all haven't seen the light of day, so definitely no stains. So I ask what she wants me to do with them. Does she want to keep them or should I bring them home? My husband doesn't even wait for a response and told me to pack them up since they aren't good enough for mother-in-law. So I did just that. I packed up 2 bags worth of clothes and brought them home. She now has just enough for their camping trip. I'm done playing whatever game she's playing. She can get her own clothes if the vast amount I provided isn't good enough for her. I'll definitely pay for this petty act later, but 10 out of 10, worth it. I think the bottom line for OP here is if the grandma's gonna refuse to put any of the clothes you buy and supply them with on your kids, at some point you just leave it up to them to buy the clothes themselves that they think are cute then. Just push that cost onto them until they realize maybe they should put the clothes on. Our next story is from Statement Nervous 5407. I ditched her. This woman in my class who comes by bus, I've literally never met her before, pretty much decided one-sidedly that I can drive her halfway through to her hometown because it's on my way and I come to class with my car and it's cheaper for her, yada yada. Offer to pay me and stuff for the ride. Not a bad person, but not very pleasant and can be a handful. She has the mentality of, but you can, so why not? And thinks she can just order me around and decide crap for me just cause I don't argue back, cause why waste words on a person I don't even know? Just because I can drive you doesn't mean I want to be stuck with you for an hour's drive. My car is my private space with my music. It's where I can breathe. I don't want to drive her just because I can and I don't have to do any detours. I realize she pretty much played me to commit to picking her up and driving her back every class, which is twice a week. So I tell her, listen, I decided that while I'm here in this big city, I'm gonna make use of it. I'm not gonna drive back home early, so just take the bus home. She says, no, I'll go with you. I also want to see the city. Like, excuse me? Did you just decide we're gonna be friends or some crap? I don't want you to stick to me like a leech. I don't want you to sit next to me. She sat next to me in class, like no seat or table space, but right next to me. I don't need you to order me around, and she does, like she thinks I'm her puppy. I don't give a flying freak how nice you supposedly are and want to help people, yada yada. You picked the wrong person to leech off from. I don't want my time to be dependent on you and your stinky cigarettes and shuffling slowly to my car. I walk fast. I park far away because there's no parking spots nearby. I don't care you walk slow and have walking problems. I don't wait for slow people. I'm tired of waiting for people. Your issues and problems and minimum wage and not being able to afford a car and your stupid kids and whatnot are not my problems. I chose to come by car so I could manage my own time. I don't need people catching a ride on my back. You can shove your money up your butt. I have my own emotional problems and I barely can stand people, and this woman just decided to shove herself into my life like I owe her stuff. I have to suffer her in class doesn't mean I have to suffer her in my own private time and space. Having to drive her gives me anxiety. But see, I realized I don't have to do anything for her or with her. So today I just picked up my bag, told her she's returning home by a bus, and left. She was pissed. "Why'd you tell me this in the last minute?" I just turned around and left. No answer. I walk fast. She shuffles slowly like everyone has to wait for her. It's the first time I did something bad to someone on purpose. The look on her face was worth it. I feel bad for OP because I know if I was in this situation, there's something deep inside of me that's kind of wrong, and I would just feel bad for them. Like telling them point blank, no, I want to drive home alone, and walking off fast, knowing they would be kind of shuffling slowly after me. Something within me would make me feel bad about that. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely one of my worst traits. Even though honestly, it's a totally reasonable thing to do. Our next story is from Irrelevant Stats, Petty Revenge on Drunk, Inconsiderate Houseguests. Had a group of friends over for a typical booze and schmooze party, and several asked to sleep over given they'd had too much. Absolutely. I have a spare room and of course there's the couch. Late into the evening, party winds down, other guests start to leave one by one, start doing a little pickup and notice that both beds are taken with a collection of intoxicated inconsiderates. Only one not in a bed? Me. No room on either. Finish my cleaning, went to my bedroom, slide the pillows out from under their heads, pull all the covers off, leaving some uncovered drunks snoozing away, and I crank the AC down to 58. I take all the pillows and covers over to the couch and have a nice cozy sleep. Man, I'm just listening to this story and thinking about where I'm at in the southern US with the heat going on. I wish my air conditioner could cool down to 58. This is definitely petty, but I don't think I'd feel too different either. Our next story is from Statistician Sum 1141, Grandmother's Petty Revenge After an Insult. This is a story passed down in my family for more than 80 years. My grandmother and grandfather came to the United States in 1910. My grandfather was a peasant from Vilnius, and my grandmother was from an upper-class family. I never understood their marriage. I believe it was a cultural imperative for women to get married, and I guess my grandfather was in the right place at the right time. In the late 1920s, my grandparents got into a terrible argument. My grandfather hit under the belt by saying, "I support you." Let's just say that didn't go too well for him. The next day, my grandmother got a job in a textile factory in the garment district of New York City. For 2 years, he came home to a cold dinner and 2 annoying teenage children. When it came to domestic chores, a man of his culture and the age he lived, he was helpless. My grandfather was famous for enjoying his dinner after a hard day's work. In addition, my grandmother cut off her braid in her hair, which my grandfather loved so much. It was done for safety reasons, but I could picture the subtle grin on my grandmother's face when he first saw her return home on the first day of work. When my grandmother quit her job and returned to being a housewife, my grandfather never again showed any sign of disrespect towards her. I wouldn't say he was an old world gentleman, but he bent over backwards to please her. My dad says he discovered certain vocabulary words, such as thank you and please. You gotta have some respect for this grandma. She was not taking any crap. Sometimes I think it's tough when you get disrespected like that to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, as the older people would say, and just prove them wrong. This next story is from Claudia Rains 99, Giving Back. Context: I was in college living with 5 roommates in a house. One of them was an open thief. Call him Toozer. He was a big guy and pretty much got away with a bunch of crap to keep peace in the house. Another roommate had gotten a hasp and padlock on his door to prevent the thefts. Toozer ripped the hasp off and stole a bunch of food. I was poor, but one day broke out and bought a bottle of Jack Daniels. When I came home from work, Toozer had drank more than half the bottle that I had hidden in my room. That pissed me off enough to decide to stop it. I bought a bottle of wine, drank about half of it, and put it in the shared refrigerator with my name on it and a note saying, "Don't touch." The next day, when I got back from classes, our female roommate told me that Toozer had drank my wine. I said, good. She asked why. I told her that I drank half the wine, then went in the bathroom and put some back. Then I went off to work. When I got home from work, there was a party going on. Everyone was having fun, but Toozer. He was on a chair with his arms folded, face looking like a storm. When he saw me, he got up and came over to me and said, "You tell me right now, did I drink piss?" I said no, but that in the future there would be piss involved. He never stole from me again. I actually did pee in it a little. He was really pissed and way bigger than me. I've never told anyone that until now. Hey, Toozer, if you're reading this, good. I think OP's was really walking a good tightrope there. Let me tell you, it'd be nice to get back at your bullies, but when your bullies are twice the size of you and threatening, sometimes it's a little hard to actually confidently do that. I can only imagine that oh crap moment when Toozer comes up to OP and they're like, am I gonna get pummeled into the ground? Our next story is from Queen Bumblebee. Want me to buy another hoodie? Alright. So my dad and I have had a bit of a rocky relationship the last few years because I've started to be more myself. This isn't about my sexuality or anything like that, but about nerdiness. For one thing, there's other things that have made our relationship not great, including OCD. I am a huge nerd. After some therapy, I decided to let myself be that nerd again. Why I needed therapy is not my dad's fault, FYI, totally different story. My dad doesn't like all the weirdness, as he puts it, when we're just going about normal life. Like one time it got really cold and I said, "Where's the Dementor?" as a joke, and he didn't like that and said, "Why can't you just be normal?" That's the phrase I hear like every day. But this particular story starts when he told me I couldn't say crap, shoot, fudge, or swear words. I decided to be creative and started saying quiznak. If you know, you know. He doesn't like that either. Stop saying made up words. Technically, all words are made up. I got my iPad taken away. But anywho, one day he told me to do something normal with my time instead of drawing fan art or watching that weird cartoon crap, and go buy a hoodie or a shirt or something. And I did. I bought a hoodie in big black letters that says Quiznak. So on days I'm particularly mad at him, I put it on and it puts him in a foul mood every time. One of the best $30 purchases I've ever made. I don't know how OP puts up with this. To me, the dad sounds like an intolerable person who just can't stand that other people are not exactly the way they are. Who cares if it's cold outside and somebody says, "Where's the Dementor?" If anything, OP should have replied to their dad saying, "Go watch a movie for once," because he's probably not going to go read the Harry Potter books. As far as I'm concerned, OP sounds totally normal to me. This next story is from Filigree's daddy, Petty Paintjob. In the Navy, some jobs are fun, some are less so. Some jobs, it depends on context. Painting the side is one of those jobs. When you're under the pump and the crew are lazy, it's crap. But when you have a good team and it's a nice day, and there's no rush, it can almost be fun. So after almost 2 years in a ship with a mediocre crew, we were preparing for a 3-month trip to Southeast Asia. With just over a week to go, the executive officer, XO, second in command, and my department head, who had only been on board 2 weeks, decided that I should be posted off and replaced, as I would be over the 2-year mark in the first few weeks of our trip. Most sea postings are 2 years in my branch. On the Monday before the deployment, my replacement posted in. This was unusual. Usually your replacement came on after you posted off, and proceeded to learn his way around while I worked as normal and took my gear home one backpack full at a time over the course of the week. Friday rolls around, my post-out paperwork is as complete as it can be, and I'm over the side on a pontoon with a few other guys painting. When I came back from lunch, I found out I was alone. I thought nothing of it, as the other guys hadn't done much. There wasn't a lot left to do, and I figured they were given other jobs. Less than an hour left in the workday. I'm almost finished and I see most of my department in civilian clothes heading off. I found and asked someone from another department that I saw where they were going. The reply was, they got knocked off early and they're going for a few beers. Time to get petty. Hand painting a ship is very simple. Standard sized roller, 380 millimeters, and long extendable pulls. A firm, even pressure and an up and down motion. This late in the day, paint was starting to thicken. 2-pack paint with a 2 to 3 hour pot life, so I stopped using my up and down motion. I was right up the bow, front end of the ship. so just under the pennant numbers. The ship's identification numbers. They're about 7 feet high on these ships. I proceed to start painting horizontally with an overloaded roller and as much pressure as I can without bending the pole or the roller. A few curving motions, a finishing touch or two, and voila, a complete 12-foot long Franken beans. Being the same color as the rest of the ship, I didn't expect it to be visible after the paint dried. I could see it while it was wet, and that's all I cared about. I cleaned up and went home. Come Monday, as I walked into my new posting, I saw my old ship. The paint had dried and overall she looked good. Just as I got to a certain angle, there it was. I felt proud that this ship would sail out that morning with my handiwork for all to see. I thought that was that. Fast forward 2 years, I post into a new crew in a different ship. Most of this ship's company had transferred across from my old ship a few months before. The only one from the old crew that had been there longer than a year was the guy who replaced me. Talking while we worked, the discussion of the old XO came up, the one who sent me ashore. He'd only been off a few months at this stage and was not beloved of the department. Apparently, he'd been fuming about having a giant you-know-what painted on his ship, and every chance he got, he was sending people to paint over it to try and cover it up, but it still showed through. It didn't get removed until they went into the dry dock and sandblasted the hole back to bare steel. I just sat there and grinned quietly. So I didn't just get my petty act of rebellion, I made those jerks do extra work for the rest of their time in that ship. To this day, nobody knows it was me. I don't know if I'd have the courage in me to actually go and paint that on the side of a big ship like that, but I'd be feeling the same type of way if those guys basically bailed on me and left me out to dry like that. And our final story of the day is from Obi-Wan Kenobi, High School Bully Revenge. In high school, I was really shy and quiet, which often made me the target for bullies. There was this one particular girl, I'll refer to her as Miss Popularity, who made my life a living heck. She was a varsity cheerleader, and there was a group of girls that hung around her that basically did everything she said, I guess so they could leech popularity off of her by association. She valued her status a great deal. I remember her inviting a girl a grade below us, another super shy quiet type, to a sleepover at her house, only for the other girls there to basically make fun of her when she arrived. People were talking about it the following week at school, and the poor girl even missed a few days of attendance because I assume she was too embarrassed to show her face at school. Miss Popularity and her clique thought it was so funny. They also loved to play phone pranks and pranked a quiet bookworm boy, and had one girl profess she had a huge crush on him, worked up his confidence and made him believe her, and invited him to sit with her at lunchtime, only to embarrass him at lunch. They were honestly the real-life version of the mean girls. I had Spanish class with Miss Popularity, and at Christmas time our teacher let us have a party on the last day before winter break. Everyone brought something for it. Chips, dip, drinks, candy, etc. On this particular day, Miss Popularity was really being full of herself and making snide remarks to people. I finally decided I'd had enough. I wasn't the confrontational type because I was so introverted, but because I grew up the middle kid with 2 older brothers and a bratty younger sister, I'd learned how to be sneaky. Miss Popularity was wearing a pair of white jeans, the whitest of white jeans. When she wasn't looking, and most of the other kids around me were up getting their food, I tossed a crumbled up piece of Hershey candy bar on her assigned seat. The seat was dark colored wood, so it kind of blended in. When she came back to her desk, she sat down on her seat, right flat down on it as she proceeded to eat. And when she stood up to go get something else, a boy behind her said, "Ooh, girl, you pooped yourself," really loudly. She said, "What? No, I didn't." And he pointed to her pants, which made others look, who also started to laugh. She wiped at her pants, which smeared it as she tried turning to look at it, and she said, "I swear I did not. I sat in something. It must be chocolate." But it honestly did melt and looked exactly like poo. And a group of kids got a hold of it, and the entire day people were talking about how she pooped her pants and sharted in 5th period. She ended up tying a sweater around her waist to cover it, but everyone at that point knew and were whispering about it. She got a good dose of being bullied and made fun of for the rest of that day, and even after that day until it started to blow over. But she seemed to have been humbled by it somewhat because I don't remember the bullying by her being as bad after that. I know it wasn't nice of me and made me no better than the bully, but honestly at that point I thought she deserved it. And because I'd been the brunt of so much of her bullying, I just didn't care. The teachers let her slide with everything, but the students sure didn't. I think this just goes to show the nasty side of school potentially. I don't think you could really get a story that sounds more like stereotypical high school experience, where you have a mean girl type story and then everybody just totally rips into somebody because it looks like they might have pooped their pants because it got dirty. Let me tell you, somehow those kids in high school, they think that's just the funniest thing ever and just love to make people feel bad. It's not like a constant thing, but it does happen. Kids can just suck, man. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another revenge story that was crazier than any of the ones in this video, click on that left video. Or if you missed my latest video, click on the right. And with that, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.